respected all the panelists and attendees who are attending this important session on extension approaches for climate change, climate smart agriculture as part of the Managed Dialogue 2020, Future of Agricultural Extension and Advisory Services. We had very good 2 productive days on 18th and 19th on 4 different themes. In the first day, as you know, sir, innovations and initiatives in the National Agriculture Extension System in India was delivered by Dr. A.K. Singh, the Deputy Director General of ICRISAT, which started the sessions of the Managed Dialogue 2020. And in the afternoon session on the first day, the Sustainable Community Extension System session was held, sir. And yesterday, 2 important sessions, one on digital extension system and the other one on the allied sector extension. 2 again, very good important deliberations and discussions happened. And the last day of the Managed Dialogue 2020 is again having 2 more important and burning issues like extension approaches for climate smart agriculture and agricultural extension by FPOs, agripreneurs and startups. So in this morning session, we have 3 important panelists talking on the most relevant and most ever important issue in agricultural extension. Probably the issue is never going to end sooner, it appears, but the optimism is quite high because there is increasing awareness and increasing importance being given to the extension approaches for climate smart agriculture. And we could not have found 3 able persons speaking on the very important issue, starting with Dr. Sreenath Dixit, sir. Sir, we warmly welcome you to the Managed Dialogue 2020, sir. I take this opportunity to introduce Dr. Sreenath Dixit for the attendees. Dr. Sreenath Dixit is the Principal Scientist and Thematic Head of the ICRISAT Development Center, one of the important center of International Crop Research Institute in Semi-Arid Tropics, currently working on the developing of the strategies for capacity building and large-scale uptaking of the science-based technologies to achieve visible impact on the ground. Sir works on different capacity building strategies to implement multidisciplinary, multi-institute consortium projects on ground with focus on scaling up across large areas. He is having vast experience in participatory natural resource management, innovative institutional mechanisms for promoting sustainable rural livelihoods in fragile ecosystems, technology testing and frontline extension strategies, location-specific adaptations to climate change and ICTs in agricultural extension. Prior to rising to this important position in the ICRISAT, Dr. Sreenath Dixit, sir, has served in CRIDA, one of the most important institutes that also works on the climate smart agriculture strategies. Dr. Sreenath Dixit, sir, also held the important responsibility of being the director of ICAR-Atari, Bengaluru, prior to joining this important assignment in ICRISAT. So we warmly welcome you, sir, and we are very happy to have your presence in this important session in the Managed Dialogue. The second panelist, Dr. Yanbal Subramani, presently working as Director for the Center for Climate Change and Adaptation at Manage. Prior to, again, assuming the responsibility of Head of the Center in Climate Change and Adaptation, Sir comes with a rich experience both working in private, public and the NGO system. He worked in the Myrada KVK to start with. He has also rendered his service for the Rubber Board. And presently, he is taking care of this important center in Manage, working on the climate change and the adaptation strategies. He is working in Manage close to more than 1.5 decades in various capacities. And as head of the center in this particular important center, he is also the principal coordinator of one of the important assignment that was assigned to Manage recently on the heat wave management by the Government of India. Dr. Balasubramani, sir, is also the national coordinator and is in charge for the most important diploma in agricultural extension service for input dealers, which has been implemented throughout the India by the Government of India. Further, he is implementing another one important innovative program, namely the Certified Farm Advisory Program as the National Principal Coordinator to create a cadre of experts in both the agricultural extension and veterinary extension in the country. He has several publications in his name, and he has also published many important books. So we welcome you, sir, and I think probably along with Mr. Navin, who is representing the GIZ and who comes with different field experience, will probably add a lot of value to the discussions. I welcome you again, sir. Mr. Navin Horo, the third important panelist, who is not new to manage. He has been associated for quite some time, and Mr. Navin's role in GIZ project was very much always present. Mr. Navin has been working in the rural development sector for close to 2 decades. He is engaged in the natural resource management and use of innovations for improving rural livelihoods. He takes keen interest in learning and adopting innovative models that impact the poverty and other social issues that are very much existing in the society. At GIZ, Digital Green Care and Access Development Services, he has established and managed different knowledge management platforms, the Livelihoods India, and he has also designed and executed various value chain-based livelihood interventions. Among these, most importantly, the specific ones are which are affecting the vulnerable and poor population around both the farm-based and non-farm-based activities. So, in the same context, his contribution in the development and establishment of IT-enabled monitoring and evaluation models for sustainable management of forestry resources and ensuring the livelihoods through the finance and development of the concept notes and modules on livelihoods are well established. And to add to one of the important introduction, he also is an expert on the microfinance. Mr. Navin, again, we are very happy to have you. We are just, you are just a call away for manage. We warmly welcome you to this important panel discussion. I think I requested Dr. Sreenath Dixit, sir, to initiate the discussion, and this Manage Dialogue 2020, I think, will start with your initial comments and presentations.
Yeah. Thank you, Mahantesh. It's always a pleasure to be associated with Manage, and particularly in my dearest topic, which I have been working for close to a decade now. As you rightly said, Mahantesh, that probably this is the new norm. There's probably, when we talk about agricultural extension, we don't have to perhaps emphasize that it will be in the framework of a climate change scenario. So the climate change has already begun, and then we have to make this on-course correction and be able to provide climate smart practices and scale them up on large areas to reduce the ill effects on the livelihoods and the poverty, and particularly the dryland areas where the community is very, very vulnerable to climate change. Well, I'm just taking you through this presentation to give a general context of keeping in view the climate change scenario, and particularly in the dryland areas. India is that way not a water poor country. It is quite rich in terms of the rainfall it receives, and nearly 400 million hectare meters of water is received through rainfall, and about 20 million hectare meters of water comes from the neighboring countries. Of the 420 million hectare meters of rainfall, we have our rivers getting this water to the extent of 180 million hectare meters. The rest 173 goes as evaporation or enters into the soil profile. And about 67 million hectare meters recharges the groundwater. This is the total water balance. And look at what is happening to our rivers, particularly even the so-called North Indian rivers, which are supposed to be the perennial rivers. So the melting ice caps always are supposed to keep these rivers flowing and thereby providing livelihoods to large number of people. Not to talk about the South Indian rivers like Kaveri, Krishna, to some extent, Godavari. Look at Ganga, which supports probably the highest number of people, 454 million people, is also severely dry for almost about 4 to 5 months a year, except Brahmaputra, which gets a lot of water coming in from the melting ice caps from across the border. Almost all the rivers, and the pathetic case is of the river Kaveri. And nearly for about 9 months, there is either moderate scarcity or severe scarcity. And there is hardly any time when you have a situation where it is not scarce. So this is the general scenario. And again, let us also take a look at what is the water requirement for our lands. Net cultivable land is about 141 million hectares. And of this, we have about only 55%, about 55% rain-fed and only 45% irrigated. If you look at this, the drill down the irrigated area, you will see surface water irrigation is about 21 million hectare, groundwater 42 million hectare. And look at again the groundwater, which is such an alarming scenario that we have. In 1960s, we used to draw just about 25 kilometer cube of water. But today, we are drawing almost 22 million 300 kilometer cube water. And the number also has grown tremendously high, 1 million borewells to 22 million borewells. With all this, we haven't really had a very great cropping intensity either. It's just hovering around 130, 140. That's all. So, is there really climate change? Often these questions are asked and some people are still in denial. But we have, if you look at particularly the fragile ecosystems, like I'm presenting here, one of the very highly fragile ecosystems in our country, in Uttar Pradesh, that is Bundelkhand, which we can compare with the Vidarbha region of Maharashtra, where the agriculture is in deep distress. And that's precisely because we have been having a very, very significant climate change happening over the last 50, 60 years. See, the average rainfall used to be around 1,000 millimeters, and it has now come down to 800 millimeters, and progressively it has declined. The decline has been gradual, but very, very significant. So it has been also characterized in recent times with very high variability as well. So look at what is happening with this kind of a situation in a state like Karnataka, which probably compares with Rajasthan, which is one of the most drought-prone states in the country. So here, irrigation is just around 30%, and 70% lands are in, dryland agriculture. And these dryland agricultures are just not thirsty; they're hungry as well. Over a period of time, they have also lost nutrients, and today we have high deficiency of micronutrients. These are some of the issues we have been facing, and there is a large-scale, deficiencies, and we do this kind of things in Odisha as well, where we see the soils are deficient, and more or less the scenario is the same. The micronutrients like sulfur, zinc, and boron are very largely deficient. So increasing productivity has always been a very big challenge, and this is where the climate smart agriculture and the scaling up this comes into focus. So now let me again go back to the area which is very close to our hearts, the drylands, and particularly in the heartland of Indian subcontinent. So that is again Bundelkhand. So we started our work way back in 2012 by selecting about 1,200, 1,250 hectares and started harvesting rainwater, reviving the traditional rainwater harvesting structures. And we could really see that there is a very good response by repackaging the technology, relooking at the technology that we already have, and then redesigning our strategy and building it around the one core natural resource management initiative, that is rainwater harvesting. And of course, rainwater harvesting is the growth engine, but it needs to be supported by various other interventions. So these 3 satellite images, I don't want to explain it more. Before we started intervention, even at a time when we received 1,120 millimeters, all the red area that you see was left fallow. After we started our work in 2012-13, in 2014 itself, with just 7 millimeters of rainfall, area of fallow came down drastically. And in the year 2015, which happened to be a drought year with only 600 millimeters rainfall, still the picture looked much better than when it was 1,120 millimeters of rainfall. So this shows how well we can really impact if we can keep our growth engine, the landscape treatment at a large scale, which will also yield benefits at the farm level. So I just draw your attention to those 3 red entities, where the total net income, annual income from livestock, and average income, household income. So let's talk in terms of doubling farmers' income, which has now almost become a slogan, and the entire country has been gearing up to achieve this by the time India celebrates its 75th Independence Day, 75 years of independence. So it is not just a slogan, it is very much possible, especially in these kind of fragile ecosystems. So after having done this kind of an experiment and making ourselves confident that this can be rolled out at much larger landscapes, we were offered a project by the UP government to scale it up across all the 7 districts of the Bundelkhand of the UP region. As you know, the entire Bundelkhand region, comprising of both the states, MP and UP, will have about 13 districts. 7 of them are in UP. So we scaled it up to nearly 35,000 hectares at the rate of 5,000 hectares in each of these 7 districts: Lalitpur, Jhansi, Jalan, Hamirpur, Mahoba, Banda, and Chitrakoot. We selected some blocks, a group of villages, a cluster of villages, and selected most degraded lands. In fact, a place called Lalitpur and Jalan are in the Chambal ravines. They represent the Chambal ravines. So that's where the work has been taken up. And this work essentially revolved around reviving the old rainwater harvesting structures, which are called Havelis there. These Havelis are large areas where the water is inundated during Kharif season and let out during the Rabi season downstream to recharge the groundwater, as well as to moisten the downstream areas for taking up sowing. So those people who were able to get enough moisture and also had the support of groundwater took a crop like more paying crop like wheat, and others went in for mustard and maybe say a chickpea and other crops. The Havelis were traditionally built with large embankment of earthen, mounds of earth. Rather, it is earthen embankments across a geography. Sometimes a large Haveli will be of 45 to 70 acres of area. So we kind of brought in improved the technology to remove that, the areas wherever, these other embankments were more prone to breach, both by degradation as well as the rodent activity and others. So here, what we saw is that we brought in the concept of these core walls. So the core wall you are seeing here, the core walls were constructed and spillways were constructed to make these more stable. And this work started as recently as 2018. This is how the whole lot of things were strategized in that area. And we also put what is called as the gauging devices to measure the runoff, to measure the sedimentation, and also to look at generate data at the landscape level. So this is also another work that we took up at the landscape level is the deep stream network. So which is very important in the dryland areas. Most of the stream network was either choked or silted up and leading to untimely flooding some areas and also keeping some of the areas very dry. And of course, not conveying this water to the lowest point where it is supposed to be harvested and be helpful for recharging the groundwater. So this is how the large-scale Havelis were renovated. The stream network was desilted so that the entire hydrology is revamped and reshaped so that the entire landscape gets enough moisture for taking up second and first crop without problem and second crop with surety. So apart from that, field bunding, large-scale field bunding was also taken up because field bunding was one thing which ensured proper moisture for the entire cropping season. So the rainwater that was harvested in situ was very much used within the plot. So on the one hand, we started treating at the landscape level, and simultaneously at the farm level also, this kind of an effort was continued. So our learning, which I'll be summing up a little later, has two very important implications for the landscape level approaches as well as the fieldscape level approaches. So what are the capacity building needs? How do we really scale it up when we want to do this kind of a work at a massive scale? So very new innovative ways we went on adopting by making use of the flexibility available within the project framework. So if we want to have the same quality of structures across all the 7 districts, it was very important to train a set of masons. So what we did was the typical masons from all the 7 districts have put them in one location and trained them for 30 to 45 days in the ways how these things can be constructed. Like you are seeing here, we are even using steel for constructing the check dams and the check walls, which was kind of never heard in either for check dams or spillways and other things. So this is precisely to improve the stability of the structure, which will enable the distribution of the load of the water when a large amount of water comes into a landscape. So the impact, you can very well see. I don't want to go into details, keeping in view the limitations of the time. So the impact is better visualized than I go ahead and then explain you the graph. This is from a district called Chitrakoot. And this is a very, very important thing that we wanted to establish by collecting data from the landscape and then really collating and then explaining it why and how the whole the issue of rainwater harvesting is not just like many people say that let us get it done in Manrega. Well, Manrega is completely an unskilled work which is designed to do designed to give work for the poor people. But certainly, if Manrega will have to be raised to the level of taking up something on a landscape level for rainwater harvesting, there has to be a solid upscaling of the skills and the hydrological concepts at that level, and then we can leverage this Manrega scheme. At the current way, at the way it is currently operating, we really need to be very careful in using Manrega for scaling up this kind of interventions. So when I just explain only one graph here, So just groundwater recharge. Look at this groundwater recharge. If we had to reach a level of 60 millimeters of groundwater recharge, actually we would have required about 1200 millimeters of rainfall. The same 60 mm of groundwater recharge can be achieved at just about 600 millimeters of rainfall, provided we have good number of structures built at strategic places. It's not just you go on building something randomly, which often happens in a target-oriented program. So we are trying to really bring in science and then get the government and the large-scale extension agencies engaged to appreciate that these are not the things that can simply be done based on in the form of a target-oriented approach, but they need to really be done with a lot of technical approach at its back. So another image. This is as recently as February 2019 and February 2020. So we started working with these rainwater harvesting structures post February 2019. Between March and June, rather end June, we construct several structures. And as a result of this, you see the difference in the satellite image. Investment made within 1 year about $33,500, and that investment has already been paid off in just 1 year. This was the area, as about just about 4 hectares was under cultivation, which rose to 35,000 hectares. And the rest of the things are there for you to see by yourselves. This is the story of one village. So I close the presentation here. I did not elaborate many other things because this is an opportunity for us to discuss. The approach here is very, very simple. So when we are fraught with climate change, the more question is, how do we really enable communities to overcome the ill effects of climate change, particularly in dry lands? It is in the form of lack of moisture. So if we have to really make use of the moisture as and when it comes, because we don't have a choice in the rain-fed agriculture to access moisture whenever we want. But we do have a choice to store the moisture and make use whenever we want it. So in order to do that, there is need for investment. There is need for building infrastructure. There is a need for building the capacities. And this also will overcome one stigma that is always attached to the dryland farmers, which goes as follows. The dryland farmers don't adopt technologies like the irrigated farmers do. Why do irrigated farmers adopt the technologies quicker in comparison with the dryland farmers? The most important driving factor for technology adoption is moisture. It is simply something like this. If a farmer is assured of moisture availability from the day of sowing until the day of harvest, he will probably adopt all your technologies, a good variety, application of fertilizer, weed management, IPM, INM, and whatnot. But when the farmer knows very well that even if I do all those things, if there is an intermittent drought of 15, 20 days during the grain formation stage, all that I would have done will simply go as a waste. Then he is not encouraged to adopt the technology. So in other words, in order to create an enabling environment to provide moisture to the farming, we can enhance technology adoption. But how can this be done? Can we do this only by approaching at the individual farm level? Well, it is not so very easy if we start working at the individual farm level. Individual farm level, we can always work providing good seeds, good fertilizers, or some advisory and connecting him to market and all that. But if we really have to make available the moisture for the crop growth through the entire period of its growth, the work has to be on the landscape level. And this is a very big and good learning that we have had. And probably this is the answer for the climate change challenges that we are now facing. So the extension efforts towards grain-fed agriculture need to really build in the prudence of resource management, particularly the soil, nutrients, and the rainwater, rather in the reverse order. Thank you, and I am really grateful for this opportunity. I'm not sure if I finished in time. Please excuse me if I have exceeded my time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. You were not only on time, sir, but you are bang on target with respect to how the community-led and the most important climate-smart interventions can create the impact on the community. Certainly, sir, we have some questions. I think you are the right one to answer. We'll spare the questions a little later, sir. But now I request Dr. Balasubramani, sir, to continue the discussion on these strategies and interventions. And together we will take the questions at the end of the three presentations.
So thank you very much, sir. Sreenath, sir, I'm really thank you for listening to your presentation. It is a very well explained, and actually all the climate change issues through especially natural resource management, we can address most of the issues. From your presentation, I understood that this can be achieved. Actually, whatever we are facing the problem of natural resources, or especially water is the major problem. And from your presentation, I could understand some of the learnings that it is the main approach you adopted is a project approach rather than a compartmental approach where going somewhere, conducting training programs, somewhere taking the farmers to the field visit. So you adopted a project approach, and there are a lot of flexibility in the project to based on the needs and the relevance. You made a lot of modification, and is mainly of a technology-driven approach you adopted to address the issues. And as a result, within a year, we could able to see a lot of change in the dryland ecosystem. And you were telling that within 1 year, we could able to save the cost, whatever the cost you have invested in the project. So with regard to I just wanted to give a brief introduction about whether the same approach can be taken up with the public extension system, and why, what are the challenges the public extension personnel is facing to take up these kind of issues, especially climate smart agriculture. So we all know that climate is changing, and we are all right from the administrator to common rural people also, they are all aware, and they are also feeling the climate is changing, and without any undergoing or taking any database also, they are all very well aware that there is a change in the climate. And when climate is changing, actually it affects every sector, not only agriculture, but it affects every sector. But the problem or impact is more in agriculture sector, especially in dryland ecosystem, because totally we are depending on the natural resource management. And so international community has defined sustainable development. What is the sustainable development? And they mentioned it for agriculture, mainly if it is not supporting the conserving resources and protecting and enhancing the natural resources, the agriculture may not be a sustainable. Because Dixit sir was telling about conservation of soil and also water. It is very, very important, because Jal Shakti also, they estimated that around 1,071 blocks in India is already exploited, overexploited. And World Bank also studied that and forecasted that more than 60% of the blocks in India will be exploited by 2030. So it is very, very crucial. Unless we reserve or conserve the natural resources, this agriculture will not be a sustainable in future. And second thing is efficiency in use of resources. That is also one of the important things. Use efficiency is also very, very important. Whatever we were producing earlier when the Green Revolution was there, same factor of production is not there. Actually, we need more input to produce the same quantity of the output. Similarly, in India, if you see more than 68% of the area is under rain-fed agriculture, and also other hand, more than 7,500 kilometers is on coastal belt. These two both are extremes. These two are more vulnerable sector, both coastal area and also dryland sector. They are most vulnerable, and resilience of these communities are very, very poor. Unless these our activities or intervention is taking care of this to mitigate these vulnerability, our system will not be sustainable. Another thing is we have to improve the rural livelihood and also the equity and social well-being, because we have different stakeholder groups where we have agriculture, horticulture, animal husbandry, within the agriculture, dryland agriculture, irrigation agriculture. So we have to sustain the various, we have to ensure the equity of the various communities. And also we have to establish a very good governance mechanism and also institutional mechanism. It should be responsible for ensuring the sustainable food production. So with this context, suppose if you wanted to achieve this, we need to go for the climate smart agriculture. That is the only option we have. So three dimensions. For climate smart agriculture, there are three dimensions. One is to reduce the greenhouse gases. It is one of the important dimensions. Second is to build the resilience through adaptation measures. And third is increasing the productivity and also income. So these three are very, very important with regard to climate smart agriculture is concerned. But all the three are interrelated. How to achieve all the three together? See, to achieve this climate smart agriculture, I am seeing a lot of challenges faced by the present extension system. One is we know that and Paris Agreement we have to temperature has to be curtailed or stopped not more than 2 degrees centigrade from the pre-industrial era. And second thing is other things we are seeing that the increase in land degradation. Sreenath has given the data, and already 1/5 of the emission comes from the agriculture. Even the Ganga river belt, I was just going through some of the report. Next to industrial pollution, agriculture pollution is more to the Ganga river basin. So much agriculture pollution is contributing to the river system. So in that case, suppose if you wanted to increase the production, growing the population, so we have to add more fertilizer, more pesticide. Again, it will be more contributing more to the pollution. So how to reduce or arrest the temperature not more than 2 degrees centigrade from the pre-industrial era. That is also one of the challenges. Second thing is, and we have a lot of experiences within the India. Actually, suppose if you take for example of flood or cyclone, Orissa is a pioneer because they have faced a lot of cyclone, and they have come out with a lot of adaptation strategies and good practices. And whether other state extension officers are well aware about the strategy already adopted by the Orissa government or Orissa extension officer. There is no, firstly he has to learn what other sector is doing. Whether our extension officer are aware or he is having opportunity to learn from the other sector already having a good practices. Second thing is in the climate smart agriculture, there are a lot of it is a dynamic. You know, we have to learn a lot of things, and it is keep on changing based on the local needs and requirement. The extension officer has to evolve the system, select the technologies, interact with the research system. So, but he is following right now the traditional system, more of supply-driven dimension. So this is also one of the challenges our extension officer is facing now. And another thing is the need for collaboration with the research institute for designing better climate service tools. And we need to work closely with the research organization to develop some of the climate service tools, because it is not uniform, and new model methods and also varieties need to be worked out in collaboration with the research organization. Whether we have such kinds of institutional mechanism to work in close relations with the extension and research organization. That is also one of the biggest challenge. And as Sreenath sir was telling, we cannot go with the individual approach here. Normally, when we are talking about the pollution, suppose Haryana and Punjab, they are going for reducing the pollution, reducing the burning of the crop residues. It cannot go with the individual approach. Or natural resources, it cannot go with the individual. It has to work at a scale, entire area. So in the other example also, 7 districts they are covering at a project mode. So whether our departmental system, it is permitting to work on a larger scale at present. That is also one of the biggest challenge we have to discuss on that. And better alignment with the different stakeholders. Now traditionally, he is working with the department research to a certain extent, credits to a certain extent. Now, so we are facing a lot of frequent climate disorders. So a lot of humanitarian grounds are there, humanitarian organizations are coming. They are helping in during the rescue relief operations. So many NGOs are also there. Insurance agencies are coming now. Crop insurance is gaining importance to risk mitigation. So then IMDs play a major role. So SkyMet is a private agencies also there. So they have to have a better alignment with different stakeholders. So, but when we approach a public department, there are a lot of restrictions to have a MOU and also discuss. They have to take a lot of permission to work with other organizations. So this is also one of the important area. Otherwise, initially during any disaster, so many organizations will be there, and afterwards, after relief rescue phases, the only extension officer will be remain with the people. He has to work for a longer time. So next is, as you said, actually it cannot be worked with the individual. It has to, we have to promote a lot of groups, strengthening the groups, and also provide a lot of ecosystem services through group approaches. That is only feasible for, especially with regard to climate smart agriculture is concerned. So whether our extension officer is having sufficient time, knowledge to promote such kind of group and strengthening the groups. Second thing is shifting approaches and new skills and capacities. So when they are working with so many organizations, broad-based extension system, and so many organizations, they need a lot of communication skill, networking skill, and co-learning skill, co-working. So these are all the skills are required. Whether he is having so much skill to promote CSA, or engaging with new type of institutions, and he has to play an advocacy role, like even so many Panchayat Raj is also very active in many states, and he has to project our requirement, CSA requirement, and fund, need to convince the funding agencies to allocate more fund for the promotion of CSA. So whether such advocacy role is capable of doing that, that is also one of the challenges we are facing. Then lack of downscaled data and forecast system at village or cluster level. Suppose we have now in KVK system, there are a group of people are there, experts are there, they are taking the information, customizing information at district level. But when we, giving the forecast at the block level, below block level, who is supporting him for taking the information and customizing the information, converting into technology, knowledge, converting into knowledge. There is no support system available for the extension system. That is also one of the challenges. Difficulty in assessing the benefits or estimation of CSA. Suppose if we wanted to convince any funding agency or administrator, so how much CSA contributed? There are a lot of studies are there compared to conservation agriculture, compared to normal agriculture. Conservation agriculture has helped in carbon sink to the extent of 1.7 tons per hectare, tons equivalent of carbon per hectare due to the conservation agriculture, whereas in normal agriculture it is only 0.8 tons. So this is okay, but there is methodology. But what are the other externalities because of the CSA? What are the other externalities? We do not have a proper methods and approach to assess the impact or externality of CSA. That is also one of the challenges faced by the extension people to convince the other organization. And we need a multidisciplinary working group to formulate climate information into agro-advisory services and helping this person. Even we are talking about the carbon credit and all, what is the support mechanism available to the extension officers. And with another problem is we already know that there is 1:, almost 3,000 farmer ratio. So even with the existing technology transfer itself, he is unable to reach all the farmers. So what kind of this, with this situation, whether he can take up all these roles to promote CSA. These are all some of the things we need to discuss how with this existing, but constraint, how to go about with promoting CSA, what are the strategies we have to adopt. And we have enough approaches are there already. It is adopted in many schemes and programs extensively here and there, and there is no time, not much time to discuss individually, because everybody is familiar about these approaches. It is a pluralistic approach or e-learning approach, experience learning through FFS or traditional extension system, mass exchange extension campaign like Krishi Mahotsava in Gujarat, where from the chief minister and grassroots level collectively go and transfer the technology before the onset of the monsoon, climate smart extension approach, market oriented approach, demand driven decentralized approach, plant clinic approach, old farm approach. So many approaches are there, but many times individual approach will work. Sometimes combination of all these approaches will be very helpful. So it all depends on, because CSA is a very complex system. It all depends on how best the extension officer think and adopt the combination of the different approaches based on the situation. Suppose take for example of Bihar alone. So North Bihar may be receiving a lot of rainfall, and it requires a lot of other approaches because frequent flood will be there. So in that case, he has to protect the crop and ensure crop survivability and crop diversification, and also saving the lives of the farmer. These are all some of the issues in the North Bihar, but in South Bihar, it may be dry situation. So he has to go for crop diversification. He has to go for selecting the variety which is drought tolerant. Even specific nutrient application based on the water availability. So different approaches are required based on the situation. So it all depends on the location situation needs. The extension officer can choose the approaches. So with this, what is the way forward? One is political will is very, very important to take this CSA into the mainstream extension, because in America also we know in the previous Trump government they were not taking far about the climate change. Now the present Biden government, they wanted to go for more importance for the climate change. So political will is very, very important, and strong multidisciplinary vision and multi-stakeholder engagement is also very, very essential for promoting CSA. And adequate capacity building is very, very essential at the individual level, community level, and also system level. Even not only for farmer and also within the extension system, we need a adequate capacity building. And social mobilization is also one of the important things to promote CSA, and adequate manpower, because in the system we see that actually we conducted one state-wise status report, and every state grassroots level the extension officer more than 40% posts are vacant. So with this, it is very, very difficult to address these important and burning issues. And mainstreaming with the frontline extension, it is also one of the, because already we have a major system of Atma, where we have a SREP, Strategic Research and Extension Plan. So with this, we have a other plan, like contingency plan. So when we conduct a program here, many extension officers are coming. Even even less than, I can say, less than 10%, the extension officer are aware about the contingency plan available within their district. They have not seen, they are not aware about this contingency plan. So I feel this contingency plan also should be merged with or integrated with this SREP plan. Then it should be local need-based technology-driven extension should be promoted, and adequate funds should be ensured. Like some in Atma now for gender, because earlier gender was not given importance. Now they made a policy, 30% money should be earmarked in the extension activities exclusive for the women. Similar kind of policy decision has to be taken. Minimum so much amount has to be spent for the climate smart agriculture. Adequate funds should be ensured. These are some of the suggestions. I think I will be happy to discuss the future along with other panel members. And we have a learned panelist. I think some of these challenges they will be in a position to address during their panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. The challenges certainly we will take up once we finish the presentation from Mr. Navin also. Mr. Navin, I welcome you. I think some of the issues have been flagged by Dr. Balasubramani, how the public extension system in addressing the climate smart interventions alone may not be of sufficient quantity. So how the public-private partnership can join hands, and what are your experiences with the combined interventions and also the interventions in the form of community involvement? We seek your valuable inputs, and then we will go for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Mathesh. So a very warm good morning to everyone. Dr. Sreenath, Dr. Bala, Dr. Shravanan, Dr. Mahentesh. I think it's really a topic which is very near and dear to me, and and something that we all have been working together. What I'll sort of talk today is primarily from two perspectives. One is when we talk of climate smart agriculture, I think we should not miss this point, which Dr. Srinivas also brought out in his initial presentation, that there is a very strong interconnection and nexus between climate, water, and soil. So unless these three resources, this interconnectivity, this nexus is managed sustainably, farmers cannot really be able to adapt to this climate changes. That's one. Or we can't really think of a sustainable agriculture in the future. Second is in terms of, we all sort of have discussed, we have also shared that agriculture is really a complex subject, which is, of course, like impacted by the soil conditions, impacted by the inputs, impacted by overarching climate change sort of impact. So it's a very complex sort of a thing. We all sort of have discussed this. But remember, like the farmer who is in the villages, in the rural areas, who is having minimum of resources to sort of manage his life, he is the one who is trying to make best out of these complexities that we have talked about. So I think what I will be also talking about is from what does it mean from the perspective of the farmer in terms of this climate smart agriculture practices or climate smart agriculture. So this topic per se is not new, and I think we all have also discussed like climate smart agriculture per se is nothing. It should not be treated as a new topic, but it's an integral part of agriculture, sustainable agriculture. Now, if you have to talk of sustainable agriculture, you cannot miss talking or concerning or orienting your measures, interventions around climate change, or for that matter, even sustainability of the soils itself. So I think it's rather than an integrated topic when we talk of sustainable agriculture. Second is we need to talk about both in terms of agriculture in general, and also the very important aspect of soil. I was saying that there is a climate, soil, water nexus. So what, and we have seen the past presentation, the last two presentations, that we are committed, we are having an issue, we are having this challenge of land degradation in India. So just imagine a scenario wherein we continue with this land degradation in the near future for 5-10 years more. Probably we will not have enough of soil to support the food requirements in India, support the livelihoods of nearly about 240 odd million farmers in India. So it could be really having a greater impact in the livelihoods and the economy of the country. So we need to look at all these three aspects. So I have this presentation primarily two parts. One is our experiences in the past, during the years 2014 to 2016, wherein we were trying to see in terms of how the existing expertise and knowledge around climate smart agriculture can be localized for the farmers so that it's made useful for the farmers. And Dr. Bala sort of also referred to this aspect, like how can we really make sure that the extension service providers, the farmers, are able to access this kind of knowledge and are able to use and adopt it on their farms. So I'll talk about that experience, and then I also talk about how important this entire sustainable soil management is, and then how do we integrate all of this to make sure it's a climate resilient, sustainable agriculture. So as I was saying, in 2013, we, along with the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, as a part of this bilateral cooperation between Government of Germany and Government of India, we initiated this project called as Climate Change Knowledge Network in Indian Agriculture. And the whole idea then was the government in India has or the Ministry of Agriculture has launched this National Mission on Sustainable Agriculture. And if you all know that National Mission on Sustainable Agriculture was oriented towards making agriculture sustainable in the context of climate changes. Now, there are various efforts which were already being made. Like in India, we are really fortunate compared to other African countries and other neighboring countries that our research and extension services are far more better. So in India, there's no dearth of expertise in terms of research knowledge. Like, we have the ICR system. NICRA project was there to talk about climate smart agriculture, drive innovations around climate smart agriculture. So what it takes as a next step was to sort of convert or take this knowledge out to the farmers through the extension services. And that was the basic sort of construct of the this project called CCKMIA. I just sort of picked up certain sort of news items in the last 10 years or so. And this won't be surprising to all of us. I mean, there has been seen sort of impacts of climate change in India, yeah, because of the kind of rain-fed agriculture we have, dependency on rains that we have, and so on and so forth. What happened also interestingly is we also have an opportunity now to transfer this knowledge. Why I'm saying transfer is we have largely been talking about dissemination of knowledge, yeah. But I think it's high time that we also talk about the transfer of knowledge. Transfer would mean that the knowledge is not only disseminated or delivered to the farmers through extension services, but farmers also understand, are able to adopt it on their farms. That's basically knowledge transfer. And because of digitalization, this entire knowledge transfer has received a new sort of a paradigm shift in the last 10, 15 years that I have seen, 10 years at least. Everyone and all the institutions, including the public institutions, private institutions, have been optimally using or trying to use digital means to bridge this gap of knowledge transfer to the farmers. And it's rightly pointed out, like this digital inclusion not only sort of addresses one of these aspects that we are talking today of climate change, but also various other sustainable development goals. So this is a very sort of a brief of the context of this project. It was primarily sort of being implemented at a pilot scale in the 3 states of Jharkhand, Odisha, and Maharashtra. So when we sort of started working on the digital sort of digital solutions or digitalization of advisory services, the basic sort of aim was to look at how can we improve the capacities of the existing public extension and advisory systems, so that the knowledge or the advisories that are there in the expert institutions like the ICR systems can be transferred effectively to the farmers. And that is where we had a national collaboration, and that has been a really, really successful collaboration with Manage. Probably Manage is a very interesting sort of institution which builds the capacities of the extension services. It's a linkage between the research and the practitioners and the farmers. So Manage is has been and is our national consortium facilitating agency to sort of implement and institutionalize these digital advisory systems. So what we worked on was actually looking at a platform which actually integrates knowledge from various stakeholders. Because when we started climate smart agriculture or based advisories, is like a multi-sectoral, multi-stakeholder kind of a thing, wherein you get the weather forecast from IMD, you get the knowledge from the SAUs, you get the local sort of a feedback, local system of extension services from the KVKs, from different civil societies, from the extension services providers, from the community members, even from the farmer friends who are there in the field, right? So there are multiple stakeholders, and all of their expertise inputs needs to come into a platform so that it's much more useful. Now, typically, when we started sort of exploring what exactly are the gaps that we need to work on. So there were three sort of major areas that we found we can possibly work on in collaboration with Manage and other stakeholders. One was, of course, how can we really use digital sort of platforms for integration of expertise and knowledge of different stakeholders that we talked about. Second was in terms of how can we effectively use digitalization to better the capacities of extension services so that the knowledge is transferred. And third thing was in terms of can we also provide a voice to the farmers so that there is a two-way communication. Most of the times, the extension sort of services are one way, wherein the experts provide advisories, recommendations to the farmers. Can there be a two-way communication wherein farmers also comes up with his or her feedback, his or her queries, which then provides a reiterative process to further fine-tune, further redevelop, further refine the advisories that's going to the farmers. And that is where we developed this web-based platform, which is again a very interesting platform because it's open source. So it's not sort of bound to any licenses and all. Any institution who feels they want to use this kind of digital platforms can use it. This digital platform was called as NICE. We are very good with acronyms, at least in India. All the partners, I think Indians are very good in acronyms. So this acronym stands for Network for Information on Climate Exchange. So basically, knowledge exchange for climate resilient agriculture. So what it does is basically it takes in the various information or knowledge from various stakeholders like IMD, farmers' feedback, the experts, the KVKs, the SAUs on this platform. So the first level of information that the advisors, so typically what we wanted to also do is to use the existing expertise and the expertise system networks of experts that we have in India. For example, we have mandated expertise from KVKs, state agricultural universities, who are there, who have the right knowledge based on research, based on experiments. A lot of these international institutes who have done years and years of research around climate resilient agriculture. So the whole idea was to build around this expertise. So this platform actually pulls in data from various sources in terms of IMD's forecast, feedback from the farmer, and then the experts, subject experts, look at these forecasts, which is primarily now, if you see, the IMD has really been working well in terms of providing this weather forecast. I'll touch upon it a bit in a while. But so this entire set of information on weather forecast, feedback, the local cropping systems comes to the KVKs and the SAUs, and based on that, they actually create a localized advisory. So now, why I say localized advisory is we all know that agromet advisory services is not new in India. It started way back in 2012-13 by IMD, wherein IMD gave this was providing this weather forecast, weekly weather forecast, and then this weekly weather forecast was validated, corrected at the local levels, at the district levels, at the state levels, and then based on that, the universities or the local AFMUs developed the agromet bulletins, which is basically an advisory based on the weather forecast. Now, the challenge there was in terms of these are really interesting documents, and I think this is what we needed to do in terms of converting the weather forecast knowledge into some sort of advisories that is regular in terms of for the farmers. Like weekly advisories is really nice. Now, there are two things probably we needed to work further. One was, of course, in terms of can we further, because these agromet bulletins are now largely at the district levels. And the challenge was in India, like farmers are more concerned about about these day-to-day forecast, day-to-day sort of impacts, or the weekly impacts that they would have from the climate. Like, will there be enough and how much of rain next week or next 2 weeks, so that they can prepare their activities on the farm. So we needed to also look at in terms of how can we localize these advisories to the farmers. Second was in terms of how can we better deliver these advisories that are there beautifully there in the agromet bulletins to the farmers, so that farmers are able to understand. It's less technical in nature, more in the vernacular language, more in the kind of way the farmers understand this advisory. So that was more of developing these localized advisories by the experts. Second, we also wanted to ensure that these advisories are of decent quality before it goes to the farm. So there is a next layer of validation of these advisories, and then it is disseminated to the farm. Now, while we were working on the dissemination, as I said, like we wanted to make sure that we go from dissemination to knowledge transfer. What we realized was there are multiple sort of platforms, and each platform has their own USP. Some of them were really effective in terms of talking to the farmers through IVRS systems, or Kisan call centers, or there were SMS-based advisories. What we thought of, we should pick up best of these and try to integrate all of these into one platform. If the farmer needs an advisory in the form of illustration or a video link, he should be able to get that. If he needs advisory as a voice message, he should be able to get that. If he needs advisory in terms of very good, very succinct one-liners, do not prepare your field because there is going to be no rain in the next 2 weeks. Yeah. So these are one-liner SMSs. So this platform actually integrates these aspects: localizing the advisories, validation, integration of knowledge, and also using multiple modes to ensure that the knowledge is transferred to the farmers. And also provides a feedback channel for the farmers. They can always through the extension services, they can always give a feedback and their queries to the system. Now, this was operational in the pilot stage, and we were really fortunate that the pilots were really successful, and also we got this interest from all the 3 state agricultural departments to scale it further. We also wanted to quickly understand what is the economics actually, why really somebody should be interested to really look at these kind of digital solutions for climate smart advisory services or climate smart information services. So basically what we did is a quick economic analysis, and if you see the cost of actually providing these digital based advisories is very minimal. It is about 190 rupees per farmer. But if you see the impacts of this, or economic impacts of this at the end of the farmer's level, it is really, really encouraging. I've just listed a few of the examples, but there are many more of these examples. So if the right knowledge, in the right form and at the right time reaches the farmers can actually best use of this knowledge. I still remember one of these feedbacks that the farmers gave in one of these really remote locations in Maharashtra. He said, so we don't need subsidies, we don't need any other support. If you are able to provide us the right knowledge in the right time, we know how to do agriculture. And that was really something that I strongly believe in terms of this knowledge transfer to the farmers. So these are some of these really interesting anecdotes. I won't take you through all of these, but I'm just to highlight that the right information, the right knowledge in right time actually has many such farmers benefiting from this kind of advisory. Now I'll just quickly talk about shift the focus from this use of digital approaches to improve extension services for climate smart agriculture. What we also realized, and this is again a global realization, that land is degrading, soils are being poorly managed, and if we are not able to manage the soils well, probably we can't even envisage how sustainable agriculture would be. Now, all of these discussions, all of this discourse, mind you, is also in the context of this global phenomenon of climate change. We can't talk about agricultural aspects as of now without having the context of climate change. So this entire digital platform that we're working on, called the NICE, Network for Information Climate Exchange, is now further developed and adapted to include sustainable soil management as well, so that farmers get the advisories not only on generic agricultural practices oriented towards climate smart, climate resilience measures, but also towards sustainable soil management, also in the context of climate change. I still remember this quote. The thin layer of soil covering Earth's surface represents the difference between survival and extinction of most terrestrial life. And hence, just wanted to establish soil is really important when we talk of climate smart agriculture or sustainable agriculture. I won't take you through this, but this is just a quick sort of a snapshot of how GIZ has been intensively engaged with the partners in India to work on sustainable soil and water conservation, right, with our watershed approach. So this entire integrated community-based watershed approach was one of the results of the Indo-German collaboration. Now, as I was talking about, now we have adapted and further developed NICE into NICE SSM, which is basically integrating sustainable soil management. And the whole sort of challenge that we are picking up now is not only this entire integration of sustainable soil management into the digital advisory processes, but also to see how this can be mainstreamed and sustained. Because GIZ or any other partner can only come in to set up these innovative pilots, these new experiences, these new learnings. But then it has to be mainstreamed with the public extension services within the public institution if it has to sustain. So one of the things that we, of course, wanted to look at was in terms of how can we bring this entire multi-stakeholder again and make sure they're efficient enough. So if you see this project around ProSoil is basically a global project called Soil Protection and Rehabilitation for Food Security. And it's being implemented across 7 countries, 6 in Africa and only non-African countries, India. And India, this project is being implemented in the 2 states, Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra. And if you see, there is a diverse sort of stakeholders that we are working with when we talk of climate-oriented sustainable soil management. And all of these stakeholders need their knowledge, expertise need to be integrated. And that's where the digital approaches comes into play. And this is where the nuanced sort of development has also happened, is in terms of now we have integrated this entire mobile-based app also for the farmers, so the farmers can also directly access these advisories on the platform. We have also integrated this WhatsApp because more than often the new generation, even the new generation farmers are used to WhatsApp and social media. The other thing also we realized was we cannot really look at this entire digital advisory process as an add-on work to the institutional partners, for example, the KVKs, the SAUs. Rather, it should be facilitating and reducing their work. Anyways, these institutions are mandated to sort of conduct research, create this knowledge, and also transfer it to the farmers. And this entire sort of idea was, can we develop these kind of digital tools which can help or facilitate or make their work less tedious to transfer the knowledge to the farmer. And so what we also realized was it is quite a time-consuming process if an advisor or if an expert has to look at different inputs and then create something interesting on the platform and then further deliver or disseminate to the farmer. So what we are in the phase currently is to develop this repository of advisories itself based on various sort of parameters of soil, climate, crops, so that it is readily available on the platform as a repository. And using the artificial intelligence very quickly on the click of the mouse, you can actually identify, okay, if this is the kind of climatic conditions forecast, if this is the kind of soil, if this is the kind of crop, and this is the kind of agroclimatic sort of parameters, this is the most suitable advisory that should go to the farmers this week. Yeah? And the experts can just sort of modify it quickly and then send out the advisory. So it reduces much of effort. So that's the direction we are working on, is to create this compendium of repository or a repository of advisories, and then integrating this artificial intelligence so that it can be easily sort of culled out and created and disseminated. I won't go through this number, but I think it's very important that collaborations are really, really critical if you really want to scale a lot of these digital advisories. For example, like Manage Alone through the TPMP project has been able to use this nice SSM platform to reach out to more than about 150,000 odd farmers. Similarly, the Women and Child Development Department in Madhya Pradesh is using this platform to sort of provide advisories to the rural farmers or rural women members on nutrition aspect, food security aspect. The collaboration with NABARD has again been reaching out to about 23,000 odd farmers, similarly with others. So if you see this, because of these different collaborations, because of these different synergies and partnerships, currently the platform, this entire NICESM platform is able to reach out to more than about 300,000 odd farmers, including our NGO partners. Now, very quickly coming to the topic that has been discussed today morning with all the experts, is how do we really scale these innovative ideas? I have sort of put a case, and we have experienced that digitalization actually helps us to scale this extension services, scale the climate smart advisory process, scale the knowledge transfer. But then what we do, what is to be done beyond? How can we really make sure that these kind of digital processes of advisories or climate advisories continue and are able to benefit the farmers in the continuity? So the first question is really like we have to always come back in terms of any advisory for that matter that goes through the digital means is for whom? Who is this target audience? Like who can really understand the advisory that we are sending? For whom is this advisory? Like I was giving the example of this very, very interesting technical document that we have as AgroMed bulletins. But can the farmers really understand and use this bulletins is the question. So for whom are these is this digital advisories, or for whom are these knowledge products? Second is by whom? Yeah? Who takes the ownership and drive to sort of continue providing these advisories to the farmers? And that is what we are now currently working on, is to really identify right institutions and work on the institutional capacities and the governance mechanisms so that this entire advisory creation, development, and dissemination continues. Now, if you see the major challenge in this entire advisory process is that of quality advisories to the farmers, which is primarily what it means is primarily the advisories are localized, it's timely in nature, and it's also understandable by the farmers. Yeah. So all of these quality parameters should be there. And hence the advisory creation or development becomes very, very critical. You can use different sort of digital platforms to deliver and transfer it. So one part is, of course, the development of advisories itself by the experts. Second is in terms of transfer of these advisories or knowledge, which basically again brings back the very critical role which more than often we ignore, is that of extension services. How can the farmers, after they have received this knowledge, be handheld, be supported so that they can adopt these measures on the farms? So that is the next step that we're working on, is who is the institutional partner and who would be the extension agency. For example, now we are working with 4 state agricultural universities, to see if they can use this digital platform, the NICESM platform, to sort of transfer create the content and then also disseminate it to the farmers. And also the extension mechanisms, that of the farmer friends, the KVK experts, the CRPs of the NGOs, to further support the farmers to adopt these measures. Third thing that we realized very early is, if you see digitalization, at least in India, is really evolving field. So if you really, if you see the entire ecosystem, government, private, research, they have all been developing these digital solutions for agriculture, especially in the agricultural space as well. Similarly, the institutions that we are trying to work with, the institutional partners, they also have the existing sort of platforms for advisories. Yeah, so it is rather not to duplicate. The effort should be not to duplicate what is already existing as digital advisory platforms, but to see how the aspects of something that you have been working on, for example, NICE SSL, can be integrated into the existing digital platforms of the institution. So integration is very essential, or else you end up duplicating and then, of course, increasing the workload of the experts. Second is make the farmers much more capable to access and demand for the advisories. And that is where we have launched this mobile app for the farmers, where farmers can actually directly access these advisories and also post their feedback and queries directly. The other thing is we are working on is creating this advisory pool of advisory or repository, which becomes the using of artificial intelligence. You can always sort of extract the needed and the very localized and the very good quality sort of advisories to be delivered to the farmers. So with this, thanks a lot for your patient hearing, and I hope I have triggered more questions than trying to sort of answer many, because as the speakers before have said, this agriculture is a complex subject, and it is made further more complex by adding this entire layer of climate change. So with this, I pass on to Mahantesh for the next part of this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Navin. I think certainly more questions means somewhat more concrete clarity on what has to be the strategy. Probably, yes, you have incited more questions because I am seeing some of the questions coming up. Maybe the first question I would like to pose to Dr. Sreenath Dixit in the context of his presentation in the Bundelkhand region. Because sir, the work was quite impressive, and the data on the GIS map was also indicating good progress. But probably what I felt was like the development activities require a lot of local participation and the stakeholder participation. But the interventions in such things are quite less visible, sir. The positive externalities that we see are a lot less visible to the stakeholders immediately. How do you bring their confidence to participate effectively, sir? That was, I think, a very, mind-boggling question in the context of the impressive results that you have shown in your presentation, sir.
Thank you, Mahantesh. It's a very important question that you asked. The belief earlier was that if we invest in natural resource management, it's a long, winding process, and it takes a lot of time to be able to show impact. But that has been now demystified. And second thing is, owing to the paucity of time, I did not really present the data that or the information that we, alongside with the participation of farmers, conduct large number of demonstrations to enable farmers to bridge the yield gaps, use better varieties, adopt good agricultural practices, which actually is the logical end to the rainwater that is harvested through such a painstaking way. My presentation did not really, focus on that for a simple reason that the belief world over is for climate resilience, one must start working on strengthening the natural resource base, because it's the natural resources that actually take a big beating in the event of climate change. So I restricted my presentation to that. But definitely, I assure you that we have been working on a very large areas. In fact, the satellite image that you saw is from 4 hectares to 35 hectares in one season is all wheat and chickpea and mustard crop, which otherwise used to be fallow. In the February 2019, when you saw only 4 acres was cultivated, the rest of the 29 acres was fallow. And because of the water resource development in the second year, 29 acres were added, and 31 acres were added, and that's how it has become 35 acres. So there's alongside there's a lot of other work going on, including on livestock. I must also tell you that we introduced one very important activity, that is insemination with sorted semen. In Bundelkhand, there's a very big problem of stray cattle moving all around and destroying crops. And that's because of a very high number of male cows are abandoned. So in order to discourage this, we introduced sexed semen or sorted semen, which is called. And we have achieved nearly 90% segregation, because technology claims that it is 90% female cows will be born if you use the sorted semen. So we partnered with BICE, and we were able to put this technology, and we have even gone beyond. It's about 93% of success we have got. So in order to build stake for the cattle owners, when there's a female calf born, they're more likely to tend it, they're more likely to take care of it, and then less likely to abandon it. So I'm just trying to take one example. And similarly, the fodder activity, including the feed and fodder development, agroforestry activity, whole lot of other supplementing activity has been going on, but I restricted my presentation only to a part of it. It was not a complete presentation of what the range of activities in Bundelkhand. I restricted presentation only to the climate change, resilience building against climate change. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think there is one important question posed by Dr. Shuchi, considering the fine line between the sustainable agriculture approaches and the climate smart agriculture. Should our policy change to reorient agriculture and extension strategies or mechanisms? If yes, in what ways? And how should we balance the policy and the practice focus between the incremental and transformational changes to address increasing severity of climate change impacts in agriculture sector? So it's just whether there is a policy overdose, or whether we are really translating all the policy actions into actions. I think probably that is the underlying intention behind that question, I believe. I think both Dr. Sreenath Dixit sir and Dr. Balasubramani sir can throw light on it.
Maybe from my point of view, I still go back to the first opening remarks that you made, Mahantesh, about the new normal or the normal. Well, it is now almost established that there is climate change, and we have been coping with it, and we have to continue to cope with it. And there is nothing like, there is an end point to it, and then we will come back once again to the so-called normal extension that we used to do prior to climate change. So in view of that, I don't really think that there is a policy overdose. Rather, I think the policy has not been really adequate to really support the extension tuned to the climate change challenges. If that were to be true, we would have had more focus on the resource conservation. There would be more incentives for the farmers, those farmers that conserve the resources, those farmers who adopt eco-friendly farming, those farmers who harvest their own rainwater, those farmers who kind of adopt the agroforestry systems. But that is yet to be seen. In fact, there is still the policy has slightly lagged behind, I would say. I mean, it's my personal take on this whole thing. So the first part of Sucharitha's question, if I understood it well, she asked, is there any difference between the climate change, this thing, and the sustainable agriculture? Agriculture in the event of climate change, agriculture in sustainable agriculture. Well, these are not conflicting. If we were practicing sustainable agriculture, or if the agriculture that we were practicing earlier was sustainable enough, probably we would not have had the challenges so badly as we are right now facing in the event of climate change. So they are rather, in order to be able to cope with climate change in a better way, we need to practice sustainable agriculture. They're complementing, they're certainly not conflict, and they're not even much different in my view. So I'll probably stop at this and then invite other members for their input as well. Thank you.
Mandesh, can I pitch in just
please. Yes, Mr. Navin, please. You are most welcome. Dr. Balasubramani sir may add once Mr. Navin puts his comments.
I think Dr. Sreenath actually rightly mentioned, like we have to look at this, when we talk of agriculture, we have to look at this nexus of climate, soil, and water. Because these three nexus, you cannot really talk of sustainable agriculture in the current context. So that's very right. The other thing is, I think there is also very interesting initiatives that the policy space has made towards climate resilient agriculture in India. I mean, if you look at the national action plans, including the one like NMSA and others, like we have this really integrated now planning processes at state and also at district levels, intersectoral that to address different sort of sectors and including agriculture and how these can be more climate smart. Now, one of the things that we are also kind of trying to do is just to try to work on this nexus that I talked about, climate, soil, and water. Currently, if you see, water management is still not really integrated. So what we're trying to do is to look at the district levels, at least to start with, can we have interdepartmental integration while we plan the water, not only from the perspective of surface water or subsurface water. So, for example, largely watersheds largely work around the soil and water conservation, which are largely subsurface and surface water. But there is a layer also below, which is groundwater, and probably the stakeholders or the partners who are looking at water management often try to work in these different silos of groundwater, or it is surface and subsurface water. So if we need to really look at the optimal use of this very, very scarce resource, or rather not to say scarce resource, but the very important resource, is to really bring back all these aspects and see how can we integrately plan. This much of is the demand of water in this particular district, in agriculture space, and other industrial and household use, and this much is the water that we have as a store. This much is what is being added every year into aquifers, into subsurface and surface flow, and then optimally planning. So that is something that we are working on, and that is what I think we need to do in terms of really looking at the implementation of some of these very interesting policy initiatives. Of course, there are more to come. There should be more of these policy adaptations that are needed. But at least even now, if you look at the kind of policy structure that you have, just to give you an example, the National Mission on Sustainable Agriculture has recognized as a fourth component knowledge management. If you want to achieve sustainable agriculture, you have to talk of integration of knowledge. But when it sort of trickles down at the implementation level, we all know we are not able to really see and visualize how this knowledge expertise is being integrated. Yeah? So the policies are there, but I think we need to sort of take it to the next level. Thank you, ma'am.
Dr. Balasubramani sir, you may please supplement the same discussion.
Yes. So actually, Sreenath sir and both the panelists, they explained very well. It is both complementary only. But I feel CSA will be part of sustainable agriculture, maybe. Because the holistic sustainable agriculture will be part of the CSA will be part of sustainable agriculture, and otherwise the explanation is very well given. Now I have some questions to panelists actually. One is that actually I know Sreenath sir has extensively worked in ICRA project, and it is a very good project and a very good component, and the very large scale it is implemented more than 100 districts, and based on the success, and it made a very good success in the pilot stage. Based on the success, and many states are also taking up. I think Maharashtra, Orissa, and also they are requesting ICR help and also upscaling that model. And so based on your experience, sir, what are the components can be included in NICRA? Actually, NICRA right now, only ICR scientist driven approach. But whether there is any scope for including frontline extension system and also other components. So like, in Pokhara in Maharashtra, they used farmer producers organization to improve the value chain management. So in some of the projects, they are using community resource person. So and there are scope for improving the contingency plan also in the NICRA project, because it has come up to district level. There are scope for even below district level to devise the. So can you please throw some light on this, sir? Because that is one of the important and good scheme, and how best to improve, strengthen, and also upscale rural agriculture.
Yeah, thank you, Balu. Actually, NICRA is one of the landmark projects which recognized that there is a need for immediately to start working on ground for helping farmers to adapt to whatever is happening. Mitigation is something which will be a product of some bit of investment through certain strategic research. So therefore, there were two components in NICRA. The technology demonstration component, which in fact was implemented with the frontline extension system only. I was one of the earlier coordinators of this project, I remember, and even now it's going on, where we took the frontline extension system, which is actually the face of frontline extension system is the KVK system. There are about 100 KVKs. Now I believe it's about 125 KVKs across the country. From these KVKs were decided based on certain climatic vulnerability assessment. And these KVKs actually led this technology demonstration component. And one of the novelties of this project is the way it was designed. The way it was designed is it's a wonderful program. Planning has gone on this one. Always there's a lot of challenge when we design a program and the way it is implemented, and the capacity to implement it in a particular way also varied among the KVKs, among the 100 KVKs. So from the point of what new components can go into it, at the time it was designed, it was so holistically designed. It had livestock, it had fisheries, it had the agriculture, horticulture, and agroforestry components, and also one most important thing which most of our projects kind of overlook is the community participation. So therefore, there was a provision even to include what is called as VCRMC, Village Climate Risk Management Committees, which were essentially the local initiative to generate the awareness about the climate change adaptation and also make this as a part of the community movement. So in a way, it was very holistic, as you rightly said. Now there is a need for integration in terms of taking the contingency plans and going down up to the block level, and probably in a place like AP and Telangana where we have mandal level plans. So if we can go down to that level, the integration could be much better. So I think the very way this program was conceived was to create a kind of awareness across the country, and some states like Maharashtra, MP, Chhattisgarh, they have gone ahead and then taken and formulated their own programs like Pokhara in Maharashtra. The idea was, ICR can always come up with pilots to generate awareness and to kind of knock at the policy door and look at these things and then formulate their own programs. And that's how ICR involved the KVKs and the state agricultural universities also. So it is time now for the states to, particularly that are very vulnerable. In fact, I would say that there is no state in our country which is not vulnerable to climate change. Every state has its own climate change challenges. So they can have their own programs, and there has to be investment from the state side, and they can design program keeping in view the challenges those states are facing. Even in NICRA, when it was implemented, there was enough flexibility. For example, when we worked in a state like Sikkim, we worked on how to fortify the climate, the thing for cold related things, cold waves, and heavy snowfalls and landslides. So the focus was exactly the local climate challenge based. So therefore, it is now for the states to come and then decide and then go ahead, and every state can make their own program, and that's how if this can be pushed through a policy level, and like Navin just shared, there has been quite a few policy initiatives to integrate many of these things. One important thing is the formation of the Ministry of Jal Shakti itself, where it has started looking at the whole water resources as one entity. It's a big policy change, but now in a large country like ours, to trickle down at the execution level, it takes a while. I'll stop here. Thank you.
Sir, I have one more. I think you are the right person. I take liberty to ask one more question, sir. Actually, you are. I know that you are very much involved in CSR project also. So many CSR projects you are implementing through ICRISAT, and we know that the CSR is not investing more on agriculture because we are all aware, because they are more into sanitation, health, education. These are the things. But agriculture being the important sector, especially climate smart agriculture is very, very important. Why they are not investing, and what are the strategies we can adopt so that we can attract more fund for the CSA?
It's a very interesting question, Balu. Actually, there are two reasons for this. One is, if you look at the sectors defined by the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. What is this called as Ministry of Corporate Affairs. So there is a ministry, and they actually determine the areas in which the CSR can be conducted. So agriculture is kind of hidden in very many things. Like rural development is a subject, an area. Environment is an area. Agriculture per se, horticulture per se has not been defined. And there is a need for actually bringing it up so that more and more people know that this is also one of that. And this is primarily number one. And apart from that, there are certain operational advantages for the CSR spending that these profit-making companies are supposed to spend on. There are, when there are areas like education, health, sanitation, and certain things like poverty alleviation and all that, a CSR entity will find it very, very convenient to write one single check and then spend on buying maybe some 10,000 sets of uniform and distribute it in a poor region. So they get to immediately record their output in terms of, yes, we spent this much money and we provided uniform to these many people. Or we bought these many computers and we gave to these many government schools. Or we bought one, a scanning machine to a hospital. Or we built a mobile hospital. And then they can just, their engagement with that process it can be short and the output can be immediately visible. But if someone has to engage with agriculture, they have to engage with minimum 3 to 5 years in order to really look and then see some difference happening. So very few people, fortunately still there are many, very few people, CSR entities have really shown some good interest, particularly in agriculture and water resources. One of the reasons why they are also coming into water resources, when they come into water resources, they obviously will also have to address agriculture because agriculture is the biggest consumer of water. So, for example, there are many industries which consume huge amount of water. A part of their CSR, they are also making use to comply with certain regulations of their water spending. So, for example, there is a paint industry which consumes huge quantity of water. The Ministry of Environment, which gives them certain permissions, will also insist that if you are spending this amount of water, you must also conserve, recycle, harvest X amount of a part of your, water use budget. So that's how they are getting drawn into agriculture. So there is again, as you rightly said, the Ministry of Corporate Affairs probably will have to upfront define agriculture as one of the sectors where CSR spendings can be done. I hope I have answered your question.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Actually, you rightly said, because they want immediate and tangible result quickly. And moreover, even most of the CEOs of CSR fund may be sitting in the Delhi, Mumbai, and they don't want to come to the village level and work. And sometimes, many times when they are investing on what you said, it may continuous drought means they cannot immediately show the result of. Correct, sir. Thank you very much. And actually, it is all the responsibility of all the participants here to convince CSR to invest more on the CSA also, climate smart agriculture. Thank you. Now, I have one question for Mr. Navin. I think I appreciate their intervention with regard to NICE and also ProSoil. It is very, very good initiative. I have also seen that tool. And I need one answer whether this NICE platform can be used by any partner, anybody, whether extension department in the department agriculture, horticulture, or university can use it, this platform. If that is the case, what is the procedure to adopt? Whether they have to take permission, approval, or any rights are with GIZ. That is one thing. Or is there any payment for that? Because already developed and the social interest they are willing to give to any partner. Because some people, they were asking me in that project, when I was discussing about this NICE platform, they were asking whether we can use this platform. So I need clarification for the benefit of others also. Second thing is many projects like NICE or ProSoil, similar kind of projects are very, very successful during the project period. So after the project is over, and it is not taking up in a larger scale. What may be the reason? I think maybe you involved in various projects. You are a better person to tell the answer. And also, how to, because many of these projects are worked in a consortium mode. So what is the issues are coming in the consortium made among the different partners? How to address these issues? I think Mr. Navin can be able to answer.
Thank you. I'll try to sort of respond to both of your questions. I think first, as I was sharing in my piece of presentation, that this NICE platform is made or is based on the open source technologies, which basically means none of the licensing software has been used to develop it. So open source also means that if you have the source code, any developer can further refine and further develop this platform. So because it's based on open source, it is actually open to use by any of the stakeholders, like whosoever wants to use it. For example, I was giving some examples like the Department of Women and Child Development in Madhya Pradesh. They're using this platform for creating and disseminating advisories around nutrition and food security. Yeah, they have sort of established it in their own system as such. Similarly, even Manage is using it for pest and disease management under the DPMP project. Yeah. So, because it's open source, anybody can use it. The only sort of thing that we always suggest is in terms of, it also means in terms of taking the ownership of this platform when you want to use it. Yeah. So basically, you need to put in your infrastructure, like in terms of server space, whatever is required, in terms of some of these IT expertise that you would need to further refine and keep on maintaining it. Yeah. So these are the minimum requirements that you would have if you really want to sort of independently use this NICE platform. So that's the only thing that we always pursue is like, if you want to use it, own this platform. Yeah. So there is no licensing limitation. There is no use limitation. You're open to use it, but then own it when you use it. And there is no restriction or from GIZ's end, like once you have adapted, modified the platform, it is your platform. And that's what we see. This platform is a global good. Anybody who is interested to use it for any other topic, theme, should be able to use it and should use it. The next question is largely a macro question for me, and in fact for all, in terms of there are a lot of very, very interesting sort of pilots, very interesting innovations that the projects like that the bilateral projects or even other research projects or even other projects do. what it takes to sort of scale it further. Now, very interestingly, I think we should look at what we are also looking at is various options to scaling. Of course, in India, the public sector is really, really strong enough. And it's not that the resources are limited. If you look at the various schemes in the government sector, whether it be for rural development, whether it be for agricultural development, just look at one of these programs, the MG Narega. It is one of the highest sort of researched program globally on social security, and also promotes soil and water conservation. So there is no dearth of resources in the public sector. It's all about how we optimally use this. Can we have the innovations which is integrated into the existing sort of public systems? And that's what we said, like when we talk about any of these digital platforms or advisory platforms, it should not be the vision of the project executing entity, like, for example, GIZ or Manage or NABARD or anybody else. Rather, it should be transferred as a vision of the respective institution. For example, why will a state agriculture university interested to use this digital platform? And that is the primary question that we have to really answer. And that's what we do when we have started this engagement with the agriculture universities. What is the pain point? What is exactly that makes you excited to use this kind of digital technologies? What is the gap that you see? And there you come in with the solution, saying, okay, this is what we mutually agree is your pain points or the problems or that you look out solutions for. And this is where we can offer the solution or we can come up with innovations. Don't go, I think as a project we have learned, as an entity we have learned, is don't go with a uniform package of delivery to a partner. Because various partners, if it's a private sector, if it's an institution, public institution, will have different sort of mandates and different sort of requirements. So you should be adaptive enough to tune it to this. For example, if I'm working with the Department of Agriculture in the state of Maharashtra, they are already talking about establishing this mega platform called MahaAgritech. Now there we have to see in terms of the packages, the modules of NICE, how can they be useful and integrated there, right? Second is a very interesting aspect that we initiated during CCK and IA phase as well. And that is something that I also wanted to sort of reorient our thought as well, is not to, do we really want to look at CSR? And we rightly also pointed out, like CSR is really short-sighted, myopic sort of ideas of the private sector player because they are mandated to do so. So buy 100 computers, do this and do that. That is what they really want to have it. But then very few, as Dr. Dixit was saying, very few are there who look at the midterm or the long-term perspective. Now the question for us was then also look at, do we really talk about CSR or do we look at an integrated business model for the private sector? For example, we are implementing these PPP projects around a few of the commodities like mint and groundnut. There, these advisory processes are part of the business plan. If they don't provide the advisories to the farmers cannot give them the inputs which is required for their industrial production or in the businesses. So it's more of a need-based as a business itself and not a CSR. Yeah. And that is where we see probably these kind of models are far more sustainable because if it's integrated in the business plan, because it's of business interest, the private sector will anyways engage with it. And that's true also for the advisory processes. Like we have talked a lot about Reuters Market Light and their entire sort of initiative around agri advisories, also providing the agromet advisories. It was really, really interesting. And they actually turned out a business model around it as well. I mean, of course, they're still also struggling to scale it further. But I think there is a model that they thought at least about, that what will it make a business sense for me to provide advisories, not just as a kind of a responsibility that I have been mandated to. So I think these are the various aspects that we'll want to look at in terms of when we scale out. Like of course, you have the public institutions, but also look at the private institutions and others who have a very critical role to also play to take out these advisories, take out this entire support system out to the farmers from the interest of the business per se. Yeah. So I think, we need to look at both aspects, and that's what we are also trying to explore.
Okay, thank you, Navinji. Thank you for your explanation. And Mahentesh, is there any time? Shall I ask one more question to Sreenath, sir?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Okay.
Can we also take some questions from participants? There are about 100 participants. I think we should give a chance to them also.
Yeah, yes, sir. Their questions are taken.
Okay,
their questions are taken. Some of the questions.
Yeah, good. I see that.
I am asking some of their questions.
Oh, please. Oh, yeah. I didn't know that. Thank you.
Sir, another thing is actually there are various projects are there like NICRA, POCRA and CCKN, various projects, and there are a lot of success it has happened, and whether we have to document, because whether we have to document, keep the repository in one place so that any such projects are taken place or they wanted to start, immediately they can, without loss of time, they can immediately adopt, like in terms of methodology, process, and also impact. Suppose, take for example, one Tungabhadra project, river basin project is happening under the funding project of ADB. Similar kind of project they wanted to start in Uttar Pradesh under Ganga river water. So there are a lot of already experiences are there. Process they adopted, they customized a lot of information based on the experience. But again, for Ganga water, they are looking for some of the information. Again, they are trying with different model. So what is your take on this, sir?
Well, I mean, we are in a business where we simply can't go by the logic of one size fits all. Well, I mean, Ganga is Ganga and Tungabhadra is Tungabhadra. We all know that. They have very, very different challenges in both places. And it's always very good idea to document, and I think no project, because it would have invested, we would have invested a lot of public money into these projects. And anything that we do as part of the project, any learnings, any processes, must always be documented for posterity, and also as a matter of learning and as a matter of as a subject of research. There is no second opinion about that. But we must also be aware that there is something in our business, which is the business of uncertainty, the business of agriculture. There is something we always learn primarily by putting our hands into the soil, making our hands dirty. So that's what, it's a hard way, learning by hard way. Although there is some kind of an intuition behind that, and that intuition is a product of, again, having worked in the field for so long, and there is some kind of a, I won't say that sixth sense. It's something like, when you have learned swimming, you just put it in any kind of water, you will swim in challenging rivers, swimming in the sea is different. So I feel there is no harm in looking at it differently, but nevertheless, it's always better to look at what kind of efforts in what kind of ecology would already have gone. I think I have answered this question. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Now, there is another question from Dr. Ramadevi Nair. I think considering the small and marginal farmers and the further fragmentation and then growing population because of the growing population and land degradation. So, what is the possibilities on the abundant use of chemicals and then water scarcity emerging and then flood situation emerging? I think to rephrase it, the climate change effects are being faced brunt by the small and marginal section farmers. So what special things can be done, sir, to safeguard their interests?
This is a question to me, Mahantesh?
Yes, sir. You can please answer that question.
Okay. Well, I think I try to make it clear in my presentation. Any climate change, any CSA effort, the climate smart agriculture effort, must be done at two levels. I try to explain it in my presentation. For clarity, I will once again say this, that there is what is called as the landscape approach and the farm level approach. both have to go hand in hand. If we work only on landscape and neglecting to carry the benefits of the landscape onto the individual farms, then we would not have actually done the justice. If we work only on the farm level and without doing landscape, this will not be sustainable. For example, I'll give you two examples. One is that on the farm level, we go and then give the farmers, promote improved varieties or drought tolerant varieties or lodging resistant paddy varieties. Even if there is a flash flood, it will tolerate. So we try to give these seeds to the farmers at the farm level. But if they have not done enough work on drought control or flood control at the landscape level, this will not sustain. Our effort that we are doing on farm level will not sustain. And all this has to be essentially done in our country because the farm size is small. If the farmers had lands as they have in Europe or in the North America, where a farmer has about 2,000 hectares, he doesn't need this, this kind of dual approach. His farm level and landscape level approach will be the same. So when we want to do something for the small and marginal farmers, it's more important that we work on the landscape. When I say on landscape working, it is nothing very new. We have been doing it. It's nothing but watershed development. So we start treating the lands from the ridges to the valleys, and we try to strike a balance between the farmers cultivating the ridges as well as valleys. Generally, the ridges are occupied by small and marginal and poor farmers because they're obviously unproductive, prone to erosion, and then poor fertility, subsoil is exposed. And those that are rich, who have water facility, are always occupying the valley area where they have assured irrigation, fertile soils. So in order to, strike this balance in terms of resource distribution, we must always start from ridge to valley, which is a landscape approach, which takes care of all the small, marginal, smaller pieces. Even this approach takes care of the livelihoods of the landless who still have stake in the water that is harvested from these landscapes. So I think I'm clear.
Yes, sir. Very much, sir. Very much answered, sir.
Now it's continuation, sir. Yeah, can I add to this?
Yeah, please, Mr. Navin, please. I just wanted to invite you for your comments.
No, thanks. I think we all need to reiterate and remind ourselves about this nexus when we talk of agriculture. I think that's if any takeaway we want to take today, I think remember this nexus between climate, soil, and agriculture. Without talking about three, you cannot talk of sustainable agriculture. So I think it's a takeaway for everyone. What Dr. Dixit also rightly pointed out is this entire interaction also means that there is an entire ecosystem playing around agriculture, both in terms of wherein agriculture extracts from this ecosystem and also wherein agriculture gives back to the ecosystem. Yeah, and that is where all of these, if you look at the assessments of around economics of land degradation, it also talks about what are the benefits that agriculture provides to the ecosystem and what are the benefits that is also received by the agriculture sector from the ecosystem. So this ecosystem could be also looked at from the perspective of watersheds. It also can be looked at the perspective of larger landscape like a river basin kind of approach. And of course, this entire thing, what Dr. talked about, has to be, first we have to talk about this entire ecosystem-based soil and water conservation. And then you have to start then talking about how can this conserved water and soil can be optimally managed in the context of climate change, in the context of degradation of soil. And that is where, like, we are in a quite fortunate situation, at least in India. We have a history of successful watersheds. We already have a lot of knowledge and a lot of areas wherein we have tried and actually established very interesting models for conservation of soil and water. And these need to be taken to the next step, saying, okay, now these watersheds are there. Can we also integrate climate smart agriculture measures? Can we include the sustainable soil measures? So that at the end of the farmer, it is more of an integrated approach. Second thing is, when we talk of a lot of these approaches, I think what we need to again question ourselves is what is the incentives at various levels. Why would a farmer adopt certain sort of measures on the farms? What is the incentive for him? Unless he or she sees the economic return, sees the return from the agriculture, that too from season to season. He is more worried about, we have sown in Kharif, at the, in October, how much will I get as a return from the piece of farm? And that's what the immediate incentives are. The farmer is not really looking at, say, 15 years, 20 years down the line. Because of my practices on the agriculture, there will be this impact on the climate change, or there will be this mitigation benefits. He does realize that if he does not sort of do the things well, probably he will not get the benefits now. And also, if he does not manage the resources well, probably 10 years down the line, 20 years down the line, he will not have the resources enough to continue with the agriculture. So what is an incentive for the farmer? Not only farmers, what is the incentive for the extension cadre that we have to really get involved and say, okay, we are going to take out these advices to the farmers. What is the incentive for them? What is the incentive for the experts who are going to create these advisories? And now, when I say incentive, it is not financial incentive that I mean to say. There are various other incentives. For example, we talked about, there is a need for not really looking at reinventing the wheel, but learning from the past experiences. And of course, India being a diverse thing, as Dr. Dixit rightly pointed out, we need to really have these localized solutions. We have to adapt it to the context. So what we also were trying to do when we talked of this climate change knowledge network is to really look at this macro level knowledge exchange between different species. And one of the things was really sort of came out very strongly, which I felt needs to be addressed, is this entire question of knowledge being a global product or knowledge being an intellectual product. We need to transition this entire thing from knowledge being an intellectual product to knowledge being a global product, so that any knowledge that we have can reach out to everyone, including the farmers in the rural and the far-off locations. The third aspect that I wanted to quickly sort of talk about is also in terms of look at the continuum of agriculture, and that's what also I want to relate to the new approaches that we sort of were discussing, and the question was as well. Like if you see the continuum in the agriculture sector, in the 60s, 70s, we started with green revolution because we needed food security in the country. And now we have started talking about sustainable agriculture because we realized the way we did the green revolution probably has deteriorated our natural resources, the soil, water, and everything. So we need to really come back to the sustainable agricultural approaches. And now the discourse is also towards agroecology, which is basically looking at the entire ecosystem around agriculture and make sure there is no negative trade-offs between agriculture and the ecosystem. Both of these coexist, and agriculture is practiced more in terms of ecologically sensitive manner or sustainable manner. So if you see, there is a continuum in the agricultural practices that we are promoting, and that is where we need to sort of go. If we really need to look at how we sustain agriculture in the future, even in the context of this fragmentation of land, the high population of small and marginal farmers, we need to bring back these two aspects, incentives and the ecological or agroecological way of doing agriculture, sustainable agriculture. So with this, I pass on to Navin.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Navin. I think the discussion can continue, but for want of time and maybe Dr. Sreenath Dixit sir and other panel members' commitment. So I wish to maybe one last question, if we can take the duplication of efforts in one side, or the too much concentration of efforts in the most powerful and lobbying villages. And if you see, out of all the more than 660,000 villages, hardly 100 plus climate smart villages. So I think it also speaks of some imbalance in the focus of the climate smart extension approaches strategy. Maybe Sreenath Dixit sir can sum up on this important thing, and then I request Saravanan sir to give his remarks.
Well, I would not call this as an imbalance because let us look at this initiative as the step first initially taken by ICAR to generate an awareness across the country about the climate smart agriculture or climate resilient agriculture that needs to be done. And a research institute can only do as much. We all know that. We cannot replace or replicate the resources that Department of Agriculture or Horticulture or Livestock has at its command. So, and it also used the institutions that were already under its domain, like the Frontline Extension System, KVK. And even while selecting, let me assure you, because I was part of the selection, there was not like, some village was selected based on, a criteria like some powerful person asked and all that. I think it followed one of the most scientifically valid criteria. I am privy to that one. At the time when this project was initiated, it was 2011-12, the first phase. It was, I think I remember even the date, 2011 February or so, this project was approved. And at that time, one team of scientists in PRIDA worked only on determining the characteristics that need to be taken into consideration to qualify a district as a vulnerable district, climatically vulnerable district. Having done that one, we also selected, rightfully, since we have this great institution like the KVKs, which are spread across the length and breadth of the country. Every district has a KVK. So then we went on to select the KVK and then put out the characteristics that we have selected this district for. For example, we have selected a district which is vulnerable to heat wave, intermittent droughts, and poor soils. So if these are the criteria, we made it sure that the KVK selects a village which is representative of these characteristics. For example, we selected a village, say in Srikakulam district of Andhra Pradesh, which is flood prone. But again, interestingly, during the earlier part of the monsoon, this would be flood prone, and at the later part of the monsoon, it is drought prone. So a paddy growing area. So the vulnerabilities there were classified as flood as well as drought. And there were some villages, some districts which were heat wave prone, some districts were cold wave prone. So the set of characteristics were shared with the KVKs and the villages were selected to represent those vulnerabilities. So I would rather say that this was probably the most scientifically implemented and selected villages. But if this has to be done, we can only show the way. When ICR takes it up, it was an R4D project. So it was not meant to be a project which is implemented across all the projects. In fact, I myself, while I was the coordinator of NICRA, as well as I was later a director of Atari, I have faced several questions in the scientific advisory committee meetings when farmers would come and say that, why your people are not coming to my village? So, we need to really understand the limitations of an institution like KVK. KVK always adopts a group of villages every once in 3 years. They move from one village to another village. So the activity that the KVK does needs to be further replicated by the frontline departments. This is called frontline extension because we only show the path. The rest of the road should be traversed by the line departments. So this is how the whole thing works. So I think we did a fairly good job, or not just fairly good job, rather I would say that a fantastic job in selecting places scientifically and also implementing and determining a place as vulnerable. We followed certain very, very rigorous criteria to determine those places. I think this answered the question.
Yes, certainly, sir. I think point well made, sir, in the context of the whole situation. Now, there was also another question just came up, but I think you answered it equally well in the context of whether this climate smart agriculture can be replaced with the climate smart extension system. I think you made that remark in terms of starting from the selection of the villages and its better implementation and maybe evaluation practices. I think probably that answers the questions as well. So I thank you for your precious time, sir. Now I request Dr. Saravanan Raj, sir, to kindly thank the panelists and share his observations on the overall session, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for all the three panelists for interesting and insightful discussions. And it's a dialogue. We'll continue the dialogue, and manage also gives a lot of importance for climate smart agriculture. That's why we have recently started separate center for climate smart agriculture, and Dr. Balasubramani is managing that one. And also we closely last few years we are working with the GIZ and having the platform, ICT platforms, and reaching large number of stakeholders. And also there we put it large number of other players, stakeholders like universities and KVKs and NGOs. That may be very interesting. Even though Atma everywhere we talk about convergence, but we see along with the GIZ and manage implements with the Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, we really do with large number of convergence happens. Every stakeholder has their own, they'll bring their own knowledge, resources with everybody they are bringing, and we are trying to converge with all other local actors like NGOs. They are taking lead in the grassroots level. That's why manage is a lot of importance, because we want to take these experiences to public extension system, because large number of extension professionals are coming for the capacity development program. We want to take these experiences to extension professionals and other private players like agripreneurs or agriculture consultants. Large number of startups now manage 200 plus startups they are promoting. We want to take these all initiatives. And Dr. Sreenath Dixit, very well known, more than decade of experience now, NICRA, one of the pioneering attempt, and it was across the country. We know those days it was given a lot of awareness, and it was enthusiastically it was taken because of its positive attitude and dynamism. We see I was at the time Northeast, even those days we felt that across the country NICRA was making a lot of waves. It brought a lot of awareness across the country. We need to talk about climate change. But today, after 10 years, we see it is a reality. Everybody need to take into these climate change issues and all the sector, all the activities. And with this, sir, we'll continue, sir. We'll continue how we'll take all these extension approaches, specific approaches, methodologies we can incorporate with our extension systems, national extension system, including public and private. We will still make a lot of deliberations, and we will see that some innovative models will implement, and manage also want to promote this type of initiatives. And on behalf of manage, I thank Dr. Sreenath Dixit. It is midnight from he is participating from US, Virginia, and it is almost midnight. It's sleeping time. Thank you very much for accommodating our request, sir. And it is always a pleasure to listen to you, and happy to today you are part of our managed dialogue. Your experience and wisdom enriched our dialogue, and thank you very much, sir, for joining with us. And
my pleasure.
I thank Dr. Balasubramani. Dr. Balasubramani takes lead in Managed Center for Climate Smart Agriculture, and also corporate social responsibility, how we can bring for entire agriculture development, including climate smart agriculture issues, other things to address in the rural areas. And I thank our own colleague, Dr. Balasubramani, Director for Climate Smart Agriculture, Center for Climate Change and Adaptation at Manage. And again, our friend, Mr. Navin, and Navin always manage good friend, and continuously, almost many years, we are implementing the projects, and we are expanding, and we are making large number of partners. And thank you, Navin, for joining with us. And as you rightly told, it's a public good. Whatever we make as online platforms or knowledge we are creating through NICE platform or ProSoil project, all it is a public good. Many see that these initiatives or efforts or experience should be taken to across the country by involving the public sector extension professionals and private agripreneurs and startups. We'll see that this public could reach a large number of stakeholders, so that it will benefit the farmers across the country. Thank you, Navin, for joining with us today for this dialogue, and we'll continue to discuss, and we'll move forward with our own research projects on climate smart agriculture related projects. And also I thank all the participants, those who are active, and there are interesting questions from some of the participants. And thank you very much for joining with us, and we'll be making entire proceedings as videos, and we will put it in the online platform. Manage YouTube channel will upload maybe after 1 week or 10 days we'll upload it. We'll try to share the presentation. Some of them asked the presentation. We'll get the presentation from the 3 panel members. We'll try to share with all the participants. And also I thank my team members, Dr. Magandeswaru for moderating, and Dr. Sagar Desmukh and Kausik and other team members, those who are there. And thank you very much for all of you joining today. And I look forward. Evening we are having very exciting and interesting session on farmer producer organizations and agri startups and agripreneurs. So what are the role they are playing in promoting agriculture extension and other support services to farmers? And I request all the participants, those who are interested, you can join with us at 3 o'clock. And also we are having well-wisely addressed by one of the senior policymaker or administrator, additional secretary from the Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare, Mr. Abhilash Lekhi is going to address along with our Director General Manage. And thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you all the panelists and also participants.